What is going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video. Today, we are filling out our updated March Madness bracket predictions, and this week we are doing ESPN's Bracketology, of course, made by Joe Lenardi, and this is updated on February 4th, 2025, so brand new bracket for us. And yeah, Joe Lenardi is usually pretty accurate with where these teams should be at this point in the season. And we take it, we put it into our own PDF bracket, and we fill it out from the first round all the way to the national championship based on who I think would win these games if the tournament would begin today. And we do these about once a week, if not more. As we are getting closer and closer to March, we are coming out with more and more content and more of these bracket predictions. So make sure you guys subscribe if you guys are new, especially being so close to March Madness. If you guys are a college basketball fan, you guys are going to love this channel. So make sure you guys subscribe. And yeah, guys, let's get right into the prediction. So our first matchup, we do have Auburn as our top overall seed, and they will be going up against Omaha in the first round. Now, Omaha has actually been pretty decent in their league. I'm not going to lie. They have a cool tradition where after they get a win, they take a trash can to the locker room, they put their coach's face on it, and they beat it in with a baseball bat. So pretty cool. I could actually see that, heading into March Madness. They get a March Madness win. They continue on with that tradition all the way throughout the tournament. That would be really cool to see. However, I just don't see them being able to do it from a 16 seed. And I'm going to take the Auburn Tigers. I just don't see Auburn losing to a 16 seed. They're undefeated in SEC play, which is the toughest league in the country. Give me Auburn. Next up, we got Creighton versus Gonzaga. Interesting matchup because this is Ryan Nembhard going up against his former team, his former coach, some of his former teammates, like Ryan Kalkbrenner. So that would be very fun to watch. I do think Gonzaga would win in this matchup if Creighton did have Pop Isaacs, if he wasn't out for the season. I definitely would give them more of a chance, but I think Gonzaga's really good front court there with Graham Ike and Ben Gregg and them guys can really help slow down Ryan Kalkbrenner, and Ryan Nembhard's going to have a good game against his former team. So give me Gonzaga there in that one. Next up, we do have Arizona as our 5 seed. They've been climbing seeds all the way up to a 5 now. They'll be going up against a 12 seed in McNeese. Now, if you guys remember, if you guys haven't been watching too much basketball this year, McNeese, you remember them in the tournament last year. They had a lot of hype heading into the tournament, and then they got blown out pretty bad in the first round. And I don't know if this team's better than last year's team. I don't think it is. I don't think this year's McNeese team's better than last year's. I don't give them too much of a chance. Can they pull off a crazy upset? Yes, it's possible. Anything's possible in March, but I am going to pick Arizona. They are a hot team ever since league play started. I love the trio of Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, and Caleb Love, as long as he's, not shot chucking too much and being a little bit efficient. He's a great player to have. So give me Arizona there in that one. Next up, we got Memphis as our 4 seed versus 13 seeded Grand Canyon. Now, again, Grand Canyon was in the tournament last year. They actually put up some pretty good performances in the tournament last season, and they're returning Tyon Grant Foster and some of these players that they had on their team last year, but they have not looked as good as they did last year. Now, when they get to March Madness, will that change? Possibly. But again, there's a lot of really good guards on this Memphis team with PJ Haggerty, Tyrese Hunter, and a really good shooter, Colby Rogers, underrated player. And also Dane Danger down low doesn't get enough credit for what he has been doing lately with Memphis. Memphis has been playing really good. I got to take the Tigers here in this one over Grand Canyon. Next up, we have St. John's versus either San Diego State or Nebraska. As far as the last 4 in game between San Diego State and Nebraska, I will give it to Nebraska, I guess. I would like to see them, at least get their first ever NCAA tournament win, even though that is in the last 4 game. But whoever wins that one, I would not have beat St. John's. This St. John's team is super hot right now. They actually have an argument after their win that just happened on Tuesday night, right before I started recording this video, where they defeated Marquette. They kind of have an argument for at least a 5 seed, maybe even a 4 seed. So they're really climbing, and I like St. John's a lot in either one of those matchups. They are one of the more underrated defensive teams in the country, very gritty, and sometimes they have a hard time putting the ball in the basket, but you're never going to question their effort, and I think that can get them somewhere in March, at least to the round of 32. Next up, we got Kentucky versus Cleveland State. Kentucky's defense is just awful. Like I said, I was watching some of the games Tuesday night before recording this video. Kentucky let Ole Miss put up over 90 on them, and that just goes to show you Kentucky's defense is not fixed at all. And I am going to have them defeat Cleveland State. I do think that they have some special players on this team, like a Jackson Robinson with some experience who can help your team in a lot of different ways. And then you got Kobe Brea, who is an awesome shooter, probably the best shooter in the country, honestly. If he can get hot at the right time, Kentucky could definitely make a run in the tournament, but I am going to have them go beat Cleveland State either way. But they definitely have to fix that defense. Next up, we got Mississippi State versus Utah State, and I like this Mississippi State team a lot. They've been cold as of late, but I am going to pick them over Utah State, and I just don't know if I can trust Utah State against some of these teams coming out of the power conferences, especially the SEC. Mississippi State's, they're battling game in and game out. Josh Hubbard is starting to come back to that Josh Hubbard that we know of from last year in the tournament. I think that he's going to have big games in the tournament. He had 37 against Alabama, where they almost were able to pull off that upset the other week. So very impressed, and I do think even though Mississippi State has lost their last couple, I think they get by Utah State here in the first round. Next up, we have Houston versus Norfolk State. Norfolk State actually just hit a crazy buzzer beater on Monday night. Awesome game. However, it wasn't against a team like Houston. Houston, maybe the best defense in the country. It's up for debate between them, Duke, and a few other teams. But I think Houston would dominate that matchup. Let's go ahead and finish out this region. We got Auburn versus Gonzaga, and I am going to have Auburn win. I do think it is an interesting matchup, though, because Gonzaga has a lot of talent, and you guys Gonzaga fans have been letting me know that you guys kind of believe that this is one of the more talented teams Mark Few has had, and that they are a sleeper to go far in March Madness. And I could see some scenarios. I don't know if I could see them beat Auburn, though. I do think that this team does have a lot of talent, and they are underperforming up to this point in the season, but I definitely don't believe it is the most talented team Mark Few's ever had. That was definitely, in my opinion, the 2021 team that almost won the championship and went undefeated with Jalen Suggs, Chet Holmgren, Drew Timme, Corey Kispert, so many to name. I definitely think that was his most talented team, but I could see them making a run with the right draw. I just don't see them beating Auburn. Next up, we got Arizona versus Memphis, and I'm going to go with the Memphis Tigers here. And I do think that Dane Danger plays a factor in this game a lot down low, and I do think PJ Haggerty is the best guard on the floor in this one. I think it would take a big game from guys like KJ Lewis and Jaden Bradley, especially, for this Arizona team to get by Memphis, but I feel like I trust guys like Tyrese Hunter and PJ Haggerty to have big games rather than Caleb Love and Jaden Bradley. So I'm going to take the Memphis Tigers here in that one. Next up, we got St. John's versus Kentucky, and I'm going to have a slight upset here. I am going to go with St. John's, and this one is offense versus defense, like as much as you could match up those two. Like Kentucky, very offensive team. They can give you 100 on any given night. St. John's, gritty, tough defense, a lot of length. They got an anchor down low in Zuby Ejiofor who can also score in the post. They got some long guards like Kadari Richmond and R.J. Lewis. Just very defensive team, and I think a matchup Kentucky would not want to see. Also, Rick Pitino going up against this former team would be a really good storyline in the second round. We would get a treat in the second round. I think it would be a very good game. Give me St. John's there in that one. Next up, we got Mississippi State versus Houston. And sticking with the theme here, I'm going with some defensive teams. Houston knocks off Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State is one of those teams, they're going to beat who they're supposed to in the tournament. But as soon as they have to go up against a team that, is a much higher seeded team or a team that is just more talented, They're probably going to lose, but they're going to give you a good effort. But I do think Houston is a super good team this year, and Juwan Roberts is really coming alive offensively. And if they can get Emmanuel Sharp fully healthy, knocking down threes, this Houston team is going to be very tough because LJ Cryer can shoot for him, and Melis Uzan, if he can start knocking down threes consistently like he has been since Big 12 play started, Houston is going to be a pretty scary team in March Madness. Next up, we got Auburn versus Memphis, and this was the matchup we've seen before in the championship of the Maui Invitational, where Auburn did, and I think we see the same result here. I think that Auburn, super good team. Janai Broom's going to have a huge game in this one. Auburn has a lot of guards, and especially Denver Jones. He can play a big role in defending some of these guys, whether they put him on Haggerty, they put him on Hunter. I think that he can lock them down and kind of take them out of the game, like, for the most part. I do think that Memphis is going to need a big-time shooting night from Tyrese Hunter, from Colby Rogers, and these guys to be able to knock off a team like Auburn. I just don't see it happening in that matchup. I think in a rematch, Auburn would win that one again. So they move on to the Elite Eight. And next up, we got St. John's versus Houston, and I am going to go with Houston. I think this is the type of team St. John's doesn't want to run into, a team that loves the physicality just as much as they do, and they thrive off of it. So this would be a bloodbath, probably over under 40 fouls in this game, maybe even more, like ton of fouls. I don't know. It's going to be a lot, but I am going to give this one to Houston. I think that they have... I could definitely see St. John's pulling this off. And you guys know I had St. John's in my Final Four last week, and they have done nothing really to prove me wrong on that. Like, they were, I think, a 9 seed last week, and I had them in the Final Four. And this week, you know, I could see this path for them, at least to over Houston, and making it here to the Elite Eight. But I am going to have them out in the Sweet 16 this week. And then we have our Elite Eight matchup. We have Houston versus Auburn. This is interesting because I could really see Houston knock this off, because I do think that Melis Uzan might be the best guard in this matchup as far as like an actual lead guard who is going to really like control the pace of the game and set his teammates up for as far as playmaking. I think Tahad Pettiford could be a huge role in this game. Tahad Pettiford and Chad Baker-Mazara, those guys are going to have to score in this game to win, but it's going to be tough with that tough Houston defense. Like I said about St. John's earlier, Houston, they have a lot of length between Melis Uzan, Emmanuel Sharp. Those are lengthy guards who lock down the perimeter, and Juwan Roberts down low, Tolger down low. They got some size, man. Francis down low. This Houston team is legit, and I am going to have Houston. I know that they played earlier in the year, first game of the season actually, and Auburn did win, but this time, second rematch for Auburn in this tournament, they go down. Houston's gotten a lot better since then. Melis Uzan has gotten a lot better in the Houston system since then. Give me the Cougs to the Final Four. Next up, let's go to this region here. The Tennessee 1 seed region, where we got Tennessee versus Central Connecticut in the first round, and I am going to take Tennessee here in this one to get by Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut, I do think, is a good team. I would love to see them in the tournament, but Tennessee's knocked off every team that, you know, is kind of a mid-major this season. You know, they struggled a little bit with Middle Tennessee State, but Tennessee's still got the job done. Next up, we got Clemson versus West Virginia in the round of 64, 8 versus 9 matchup, and Clemson is a very solid team. Made the Elite Eight last year. They don't have P.J. Hall anymore, but they're still a very good team. West Virginia has one of the best transfers, one of the best point guards in the country in Javon Small, and it just got announced earlier today, Tucker DeVries is having season-ending shoulder surgery, so he is not going to be back for the tournament. So we can no longer take that into consideration as far as, is he coming back, is he not, for West Virginia. But I do think this West Virginia team is really good. I think that this would be a gritty game. Probably come down to the wire. but I am going to take Clemson in this one. I think I trust them more, especially rebounding. You got a beast on the boards like Ian Shefflin, and you got a team like West Virginia, who I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of West Virginia. One of their biggest struggles is being able to clean the glass. So Clemson does that very well. I think that they can get by West Virginia. Next up, we got Missouri versus UC Irvine as our 12th seed, and Missouri's kind of tough to pick against right now. Tamar Bates, Caleb Grill, hot team, a lot of veterans, a lot of transfers come together in here and started winning a lot of games in a tough league. It's hard to pick against Missouri there right now, but UC Irvine is one of the better mid-majors in the country this season, and I kind of really want to pick that upset. I really do, but I'm not. I'm going to pick Missouri in this one. I just think they're too good to not get a win in the first round of March Madness this year. Give me the Tigers to move on. Then we got Wisconsin versus Arkansas State. Arkansas State, I could see them potentially getting a win in the right matchup. I know that they beat Memphis earlier in the season. I just don't know if they're really that good. I think that they're a good team for sure, but I think they're a little bit overrated. I'm not going to lie. As one of the top mid-majors in the country. I just don't think the Sun Belt is that good of a league, and who knows if they'll be able to win that league tournament, but I am going to take Wisconsin here in this one. I really like John Blackwell as a point guard. I know John Tunji gets a lot of love, and it's warranted for sure because he is the type of player that I could see kind of making a little bit of a run in March Madness, but also Blackwell is a really fun player to watch. And they got guys like Crow down low. I do really like this Wisconsin team. I think they're slept on a lot. Next up, we got Oregon versus either BYU or Pitt. And this would be an awesome last four-in game between BYU and Pitt. And I am actually going to have Pitt win that game. And I am going to have Pitt win against Oregon. I just think that this Pitt team is pretty well-rounded and a team that, in my opinion, underperformed for the talent they have on their roster. I think Jalen Lowe, Ishmael Leggett, they got the Diaz-Graham, Slenderman down low at center. They have a pretty solid squad, and I just don't know why they've kind of let the wheels fall off the wagon here throughout ACC play. But I am going to have them, hopefully, somewhat trusting them to get it together here and upset Oregon here in the first round, 11-6. Then we got Texas A&M versus Northern Colorado. And I do like this Northern Colorado team out of their league a lot. And you guys know that, but I think that's a bad matchup with Texas A&M. I think that this team is hungry to make a run in March Madness. Wade Taylor's senior year. Zurich Phillips has really come into his own this season. Henry Coleman down low, I think, is a very underrated big. Give me the Aggies to move on. UConn versus Ohio State. I think that would be a very close game. I think Ohio State would definitely have a chance in that one, but I am going to go with the UConn Huskies. They've been playing better as of late, and solo ball has broken out. Last game against Marquette looked amazing. Very underrated. Solo ball. If they get Liam McNeely back, UConn could be dangerous to make a little bit of a run. I'm not going to lie, and right now I'm going to have them over Ohio State here in the first round. Next up, we got Iowa State versus Florida Gulf Coast, and I am going to take Iowa State. I know Iowa State's been struggling lately. They just lost to Kansas State at home. I think they're going to get it together by the time of the NCAA tournament for sure, but even though they're not playing great right now, I'd still have them over Florida Gulf Coast. I think Curtis Jones is one of the better players in the country, super underrated, and an amazing shooter. Him, Keyshawn Gilbert, Taman Lipsey, an excellent guard trio. And I'm going to have them here in the next round. Then we got Tennessee versus Clemson in the second round. I could see Clemson kind of giving them a run for their money, but I do think Tennessee is going to be able to get by them here in that one and make it to the Sweet 16. Then we got Missouri versus Wisconsin in a 4-5 matchup. That would be awesome to see. I am going to go with the 4 seed, though. I am going to go with Wisconsin. I know I was praising both of these teams, and they both have those type of players that I could see making a run in March Madness. John Blackwell, Caleb Grill, those two could have some sort of heat check. That would be super cool to watch. But I'm going to take Wisconsin. I like this Wisconsin team. I'm starting to like them more and more the more I watch them. And I could see them as a sneaky team to make a little bit of a run here. Got them in the Sweet 16. Look out for the Badgers. Next up, we got Pitt versus Texas A&M. And I could see a Pitt run here, but I think Texas A&M's hungry, man. And I don't trust Pitt really right now the way that they've been playing to take them anywhere past the second round. To be honest, you guys should be grateful I haven't picked you in the first round because you've been playing pretty shitty as of late, especially that last game. Not good. Barely put up 20 in the first half at home. Really wasn't good. And that was against Virginia. Virginia's not that good. So that was a little bit rough to watch. I don't know if I trust Coach Capel to I feel like he has a talented team. I just don't know if Pitt's going to be able to make a run this year. And A&M, I think they're hungry, man. I got them to Sweet 16. Next up, we got UConn versus Iowa State. And I could see UConn pulling this off, especially with the way both these teams have been playing as of late. But I think Iowa State gets it together. I think they still have a really good defensive team. And if they're able to play really good defense on a guy like Solo Ball, who's going to help save the UConn Huskies in that scenario? I mean, if Liam McNeely is back, he could definitely play a big piece of that. But I am going to take Iowa State in this one. I think they're the better team all around and a really good defensive team. Then we got Tennessee versus Wisconsin. And we're going to have our 1 seed go down here in the Sweet 16 because I am going to have the Wisconsin Badgers move on to the Sweet 16. I just really like some of these players on Wisconsin. The more and more I watch them, the more and more I like them. Like I said, this is a John Tunji game written all over it. John Blackwell shadows Zakai Ziegler, doesn't let him have a big impact on the game. Give me Wisconsin to march on. Next up, we got A&M versus Iowa State. I think that this would be an awesome matchup. I think that this would, come down to whoever wants it more, of course. And Henry Coleman down low, I think, is going to have a big piece in this one. Can a guy like Deshaun Jackson have a big game defensively and lock him up and have a big game on the glass? The small things like that, getting the boards, is going to be huge in this game. And although I do think Iowa State has the better guards, I am going to go with Texas A&M to move on to the Elite 8. So we got our 4 seed and our 3 seed in the Elite 8 of this one. And who's going to make it to the Final Four? Can Texas A&M make it to their first ever Final Four? And I will. I am going to have them do it. I'm going to have Texas A&M knock off Wisconsin to make it to the Final Four. 2 head coaches that I would love to see be able to make runs. Buzz Williams for Texas A&M and Greg Gard for Wisconsin. I really want to see them do great this year in the tournament. I think with the way the bracket has fallen for these teams, I could see potential for some runs there. So I like it there for those 2 teams a lot here out of that region. Texas A&M makes it to the Final Four, and we will have a battle of Texas in the Final Four. Texas A&M versus Houston. Next region, we got Alabama as our 1 seed. Actually, let's go down to this region. Duke as our 1 seed first. Let's go Duke over Marist. I am seeing, a lot of hype around Marist, so look out for them. If they can get a better draw, a better than a 16 seed, look out for a potential upset. But the Duke Blue Devils, too good. They win round 1. Next up, we got Baylor versus Texas. Another battle of Texas here. Baylor's been looking a lot better recently, and it has been the emergence of these freshmen. Not only VJ Edgecombe dropping 30 all of a sudden and shooting, 5 of 6 from the 3-point line. Like, where has this been? He's really broken out the last few games, but also their other freshman, Rob Wright, who has really been more consistent throughout the season. He's also been playing really fantastic for him lately. So I will have Baylor actually win in the first round. I know Texas does have another freshman themselves in Trey Johnson, but I think Scott Drew, really good coach there. He's going to get it done there in round 1. Then we got Ole Miss versus George Mason. Ole Miss, big win tonight over Kentucky. Put up 90 points on Kentucky's defense. I really like Malik Dia down low. Sean Padula is a great point guard. Obviously, a good defense. They're coached by Chris Beard. But I'm going to pick a little bit of an upset here and go with George Mason. George Mason, I think, is going to be dangerous if they can get a bid out of the A10 conference. I think whoever comes out of the A10 conference is going to be able to at least put up a fight for a first-round victory. That is a very good league, and it's probably most likely only going to get one team out of that league that makes it to the tournament. Last week I had VCU pulling off an upset. This week it's going to be George Mason. KD Johnson, former Auburn Tiger, is on this team, and they've been playing really well as of late. And it would be great to see George Mason get a win in March Madness the same season that their legendary coach, Coach L, retires, the one that led them to the Final Four. So that would be great to see. Good storyline there, and it makes sense. I like that upside. I like the matchup for him. I do think Ole Miss definitely could win that game, of course. 5 seed can win the game over the 12 seed, but I am going to pick this upside here for this week. Next up, we got Michigan State versus Akron. I don't like the MAC conference this year a lot. I would say Akron probably is the best team, but I don't see them beating this Michigan State team. So give me Sparty to move on. Next up, we do have UCLA versus Georgia, and UCLA has been playing better as of late. Eric Daly has been an awesome, emergence for this UCLA team, but I think that Asa Newell is the better big man in that matchup, and I'm going to take Georgia Bulldogs to pull off the 11-6 upset. Then we got Kansas versus Towson. To be honest, I don't know if I've even watched a Towson game this year, and I've watched a lot of college basketball. You guys know this. But I don't know if I've watched a Towson game. This is probably I think this is actually the first time I've seen them in a Bracketology. So I am going to go with Kansas. They've been looking a lot better as of late, especially that win at home that they had against Iowa State on Monday night. Looked a lot better. We'll see if they can continue to do so. But I will have them get by here in the first round. Then we do have Michigan versus New Mexico, and I'm going to have New Mexico win. I'm going to have the 10 seed win over the 7 seed here. I like the Lobos. Donovan Dent has been on a tear lately. They look like the best team in the Mountain West Conference, and Michigan just really hasn't impressed me. Although they've been winning against teams like Penn State, who Penn State looks awful, by the way. They lost to Minnesota tonight. I don't know. Michigan just hasn't looked good lately. I don't know how to explain it. Give me New Mexico. Then we got Florida versus UNC Asheville. I will say UNC Asheville is probably the best 15 seed in this bracket, but I am going to go with the Florida Gators. They looked really good against Vanderbilt tonight with no Walter Clayton, so that was huge for them. And yeah, I'm going to take the Gators in that one. Alex Condon down low has really been playing great lately as well. Duke versus Baylor. That would be a fun second round matchup. Baylor's been heating up. VJ Edgecombe, Cooper Flagg, awesome freshman. But I am going to take Duke to move on in that one. Then we do have George Mason versus Michigan State. And I would love to keep the retired Coach L train going here with George Mason. I could definitely see it happening on a nice little run there. But I'm going to hold back on it, and I am going to take Sparty. I think they're disciplined enough. This is a good team that plays together under Coach Izzo. He usually gets it done in March Madness. Give me Sparty here to the Sweet 16. Then we got Georgia versus Kansas. This is where I'm going to go with the upset. I don't trust Kansas at all. I think Georgia is capable of winning some big games because we've seen it already this year. Give me the Georgia Bulldogs to get it done, and Coach Mike White gets this Bulldogs team to the Sweet 16 as an 11 seed. Then we got New Mexico versus Florida. I do think that Donovan Dent would have a big game in this one and would keep it pretty close. And that Donovan Dent versus Walter Clayton matchup there would feed families in the second round, but I am going to go with Florida here in this one. I can't pick the upside. I've been picking Florida to lose in the second round. I think the last 2 bracket predictions videos, and I do think Florida is capable of making it pretty far, so I am going to take the Gators in that one. Now, for Sweet 16 matchups, we do have Duke versus Michigan State. I've seen this in a couple of my March Madness predictions. I think I picked Michigan State in one of them to make it to the Final Four, actually, but I'm going to go with Duke this time. I think that this Duke team, between their freshmen, they have 3 really good freshmen. It's not just Cooper Flagg. And Colin Kneppel, I think he's capable of being one of the better shooters in the country. And I like the team that they have around him. They got guys like Sion James and Mason Gillis who kind of give you a little bit of veteran presence, and Tyrese Proctor. I like this team that they have around him. I think that Cooper Flagg is the best player on the court in most matchups. So give me Duke here in this one. And then we got Georgia versus Florida. Florida-Georgia line. Rivalry game. SEC battle. I am going to take the Florida Gators in this one. I think that Florida matches up really well with Georgia. I think that they have 3 really good guards between Walter Clayton Jr., Elijah Martin, and Will Richard, who they're capable of putting up a lot of points. I think that they can do it in that one. And then to make it to our Final Four, we have our 1 seed versus our 2 seed. I am going to take the Duke Blue Devils. I think that Duke just plays fantastic defense. They're going to be able to slow this Florida team down. Cooper Flagg's going to be the best player on the court in this game. I think Walter Clayton has a big game, though. I could definitely see Walter Clayton as one of those guys who just shoot the ball crazily throughout March Madness and lead his team to go far, which he is going to do here in this one, make it all the way to the Elite Eight. But it comes to an end to the Duke Blue Devils, who become the first 1 seed in my bracket so far to make it to the Final Four. We have a 1, 2, and a 3 seed so far. Last region, we have Alabama as our 1 seed, and they're going against Southern University. I am going to have Alabama win that one. Then we have our 8-9 matchup between St. Mary's and Oklahoma. I actually really like this St. Mary's team. Oklahoma hasn't been playing as good as of late. They have a really good freshman, Jeremiah Fears, but I think St. Mary's has a complete team. They control the pace. They're going to be able to win this one against this Porter Moser Oklahoma team. Next, we've got Illinois versus Yale. I think we actually had the same exact matchup last week, and I did pick Yale. And although I do think it is very possible Yale can win that game, and I kind of want to pick it again, I'll pick Illinois this time. I do, however, really like Yale in this matchup, and if it was March Madness right now and this was the official bracket, I would pick Yale. But I'm going to hold back on that upset for now, and I am going to go with Illinois. Then we do have Texas Tech versus Samford. I do think that Samford is a pretty good offensive team. Who could get it done, but Texas Tech is a good defensive team. They've been hot lately. They're coming off of a really good win against Houston. They're actually in halftime against Baylor right now as I am recording this video, but I am going to go with Texas Tech. They've been playing too good lately. Elijah Hawkins has been an excellent point guard for them. Chance McMillan has been one of the more underrated stars in college basketball, and JT Toppin down low. Like, they have all the pieces to be able to make a far run in March Madness this year. Give me Tech here to move on. Maryland versus Drake. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was looking at this matchup and looking at the bottom region, from the 6'11 to the 215. And I was looking at this matchup and I was like, whoever wins this matchup, there is a path for them. If you are Maryland or Drake and this is the draw you get, you have to be happy, because if you can get out of that first round and you can knock off a Marquette team in the second round, I feel like there is a good path for them to make it possibly even to the Final Four. But I like this Maryland team a lot, guys. I like Derek Queen down low, paired there with Julian Reese. Very good front court. But Drake has some players that I just feel like have some March magic in them. They've been playing a lot better ever since they took a couple of losses in the middle point of the season. And they're looking really good right now. Joe Lenore's got him in here as an at-large bid. And I'm going to take the Drake Bulldogs to get it done. Behind their star player Bennett Sturts, who has been going off all year long. Very good player. Give me the Drake Bulldogs to move on past Maryland. Then we have Marquette versus Jacksonville State. I think Cam Jones is one of the best players in the country. I don't know too much about Jacksonville State. This is the first time I'm seeing them in this bracketology, but I am going to go with Marquette here to win this one. I think they have a lot of really good guards between Stevie Mitchell, Cam Jones, and Chase Ross, who's really emerged lately. David Joplin as a forward. Very good team. Give me Marquette in that one. Next up, we got Louisville versus Vandy. And I don't know if I trust Vandy too much, to be honest. I think that they have a decent team. They have some good transfers, including A.G. Hogard. Two teams have first-year head coach accomplishment that they got these programs to the tournament, but I am going to take Louisville. I think they are the more rounded team, more well-rounded team. Then we got Purdue versus Bryant as our 2 versus 15 seed, and I like Purdue in this one. I do think that Braden Smith is one of the best point guards in the country. Trey Kaufman-Renn has been getting better and better as the season's gone on down low. Give me Purdue here in this one. Then we got in our second round Alabama versus St. Mary's. I could see St. Mary's, being able, if they can control the pace in this one, that's going to be a huge, that's going to be a huge factor in this game. Is who's controlling the pace. Alabama likes to go, put up as many points up as fast as possible, and St. Mary's likes to control the pace, slow it down. We know how these Randy Bennett coached St. Mary's teams are, but I think Alabama too fast, too good for St. Mary's. I gotta take Alabama in that matchup. Then we got Illinois versus Texas Tech. This is a matchup that I feel like favors Texas Tech a lot, and that's because I think JT Toppin dominates Tim Osloff down low, and I also believe that Illinois is going to turn over the ball too much with Kasparas at point guard. I do think he's a really good player, really good freshman, but he does turn the ball over a lot, and Texas Tech is going to make you pay for your turnovers. Give me Texas Tech in that matchup. Then we got Drake versus Marquette. Bennett starts. Can he keep the party going? I think he does. I'm taking the Drake Bulldogs as an 11 seed over 3-seeded Marquette. I just don't know if I trust this Marquette team, especially down low. I think Drake's going to come in very hungry. They're going to want it. They have players that have, played D2 and followed their head coach, moved on, gotten, jobs and started with their life before their coach got the job at Drake. Gave them a call. They came back to play D1 basketball. Is the perfect story for a March Madness run. They get it done via a buzzer beater against Marquette here in the second round. Next up, we got Louisville versus Purdue. And I actually kind of like Louisville in this matchup. I'm not going to lie. I think that Louisville is going to play tough. They're going to play tough defense. They're going to be able to stop this Purdue offense, whether it's with the pick and roll and Trey Kaufman-Renn. I think that Fletcher Lawyer has a bad shooting night. I think Chucky Hepburn has a huge game. Smith has a really good shooting night for Louisville. Give me Louisville to pull off the 7-2 upset in the second round and move on to the Sweet 16. And then we got Alabama versus Texas Tech. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting in this region, as I am going to have Texas Tech upset the 1 seed in this region in the Sweet 16, Alabama, and move on to the Elite 8. And I just believe that this Texas Tech team matches up kind of decently with Alabama as far as their defense. They got JT Toppin down low, can slow down Cliff Amorie. You can, Cliff Amorie is not going to stretch the floor for you, so JT Toppin can protect the rim. You got Mark Sears, who I think, Elijah Hawkins can have a big day against. And I like the matchup. I like Texas Tech to, whether they decide to control the pace or run with Alabama. I think that they can do both. I think they're going to find a way to force some turnovers, be able to get into some fast breaks, but still be able to slow down the pace in the half court as well. Give me Texas Tech to move on in this one. And then we got Drake versus Louisville, and the Drake magic continues. Bennett starts, drops 28 against Louisville, and moves on to the next round. We have our Elite 8 matchup, a 4 seed versus an 11 seed. This would be awesome story right here for the Drake Bulldogs to try to get to the Final Four a year after losing their head coach, losing Darren DeVries to West Virginia, losing Tucker DeVries to West Virginia. All their whole team from last year who made the NCAA tournament gone. And now back in the tournament with a new great head coach and some great players from the D2 that came up to play D1 basketball, made it to March Madness, and Texas Tech, an awesome team who has really been hitting their stride lately. I definitely believe that there is a path for them to the Final Four as well. Both these teams are going to be fighting. Both these teams are really defensive. Drake is also a very defensive team, and I think this is going to be a low-scoring one. It's going to be gritty. It's going to be fun. Who makes the Final Four is going to be one of the best games of this tournament. But I am going to take Drake to finish the story in this one, finish the Cinderella story, and make it to the Final Four as an 11 seed. So our Final Four is set. We have two-seeded Houston going up against three-seeded Texas A&M in a battle of Houston, or in a battle of Texas, if I could talk. And then we have 11-seeded Drake versus 1-seeded Duke, and it is going to be Drake the Cinderella versus Duke, the top dog brand, number 1 seed, ultimate underdog game here for Drake. Let's start with the Battle of Texas. We have Houston versus Texas A&M. I think that these are the two best teams. I mean, Texas Tech's really good too, so it's kind of hard to say that because Texas Tech did just beat Houston, but I think these are probably the two best teams in Texas. Like I said, Texas Tech's up there, so you could argue them. I had them in my Elite Eight as well. But it's hard to pick against Houston in this matchup, I do feel like. I feel like Henry Coleman, is going to have an awesome impact on this Texas A&M run to the Final Four. But between Juwan Roberts, Tolger, Francis, it's going to be tough for him to have a huge impact in this one because Houston's going to clean the glass, not only defensively but on the offensive glass, and I also feel like they have some lengthy guards that are going to be able to shut down Texas A&M and Wade Taylor. So I am going to take Houston to move on to the championship game. I think it's going to be too much for Texas A&M in that one. Then we have Drake versus Duke, and as much as I want to continue the story, I think I had Drake pull off enough upsets in this one. I am going to have the Duke Blue Devils be able to pull it off and make it to the national championship. Then we have our championship game between Houston and Duke, and this is going to be a fight. This is going to be a fantastic matchup. Two very good defensive teams. I would say the two best defensive teams in the country, but also teams that have some scoring. I mean, between Cooper Flagg on Duke and Con Kneppel, and those are kind of your main scorers there. And then Houston, you got guys like Emmanuel Sharp, who's going to shoot the 3-ball. LJ Cryer, who can get you a bucket, more of a shot creator, closer type of guy. And then you got Milos Uzan, who's more of a playmaker, control the pace guy at point guard. Honestly, in this matchup, I like Houston a lot. And they're the 2 seed. Duke's the 1 seed. I'm going to go with Houston to win it all in a huge shocker. I don't know if you guys expected me to pick Houston this week to win the national championship, but I'm going to do it because I'm not going to lie. I was going to have Duke win the championship, but the more and more I think about this matchup, it makes a lot of sense that Houston would win. And I think that Houston's defense is going to be very tough on Cooper Flagg. I still think he's going to have a really good game, but maybe not the most efficient game. And I love the front court pieces for this Houston team, especially Juwan Roberts and Tolger, man. Those guys are tough. And I think Milos Uzan, he's a true lead guard, man. He's really getting into that Houston system. He's not a Jamal Shed, but he's really coming into his own. And if he can start knocking down the 3-point even more consistently than he's already been, this Houston team is going to be very, very tough to beat. And I'm going to take the Cougs to win it all over Duke in this one. Let me know what you guys think, guys. Who would you guys have in the Final Four if this were to be the bracket today? And that's going to do it for this one. Make sure you guys subscribe if you guys are new. We're going to come out with a new March Madness predictions every single week, if not sooner, along with a bunch of other college basketball content coming your way as well. March Madness right around the corner. Make sure you guys subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.